administration after another claiming to have secured the border. Clearly they haven't. Clearly they haven't secured the border. I'm not talking about 100% perfection. How about 98% perfection? I mean, that's what they require from industry when it comes to pollution. How about we apply that same standard to securing the border? The Associated Press, Chicago, Mexican drug cartels, whose operatives once rarely ventured beyond the U.S. border, are dispatching some of their most trusted agents to live and work deep inside the United States, an emboldened presence that experts believe is meant to tighten their grip on the world's most lucrative narcotics market and maximize profits. See, folks, this isn't about picking lettuce. If left unchecked, authorities say the cartel's move into the American interior would render the syndicates harder than ever to dislodge and pave the way for them to expand into other criminal enterprises such as prostitution, kidnapping and extortion rackets, and money laundering. Cartel activity in the U.S. is certainly not new. Starting in the 90s, the ruthless syndicates became the nation's #1 supplier of illegal drugs, using unaffiliated middlemen to smuggle cocaine, marijuana, and heroin beyond the border, or even to grow pot here in the United States. But a wide-ranging Associated Press review of federal court cases and government drug enforcement data, plus interviews with many top law enforcement officials, indicate the groups have begun deploying agents from their inner circles to the U.S. cartel operatives are suspected of running drug distribution networks in at least 9 non-border states, often in the middle-class suburbs in the Midwest, South, and Northeast. The cartel threat looms so large that one of Mexico's most notorious drug kingpins, a man who has never set foot in Chicago, was recently named that city's public enemy #1, the same notorious label once assigned to Al Capone. The Chicago Crime Commission, a non-government agency that tracks crime trends in the region, said it considers Joaquin El Chapo Guzman even more menacing than Capone, because Guzman leads the deadly Sinaloa cartel, which supplies most of the narcotics sold in Chicago and in many cities across America. Years ago, Mexico faced the same problem of then nascent cartels expanding their power and didn't nip the problem in the bud, said Jack Kilorian, head of an anti-trafficking program in Atlanta for the Office of National Drug Control Policy. And see where they are now, he said. Riley sounds a similar alarm. He said, people think the border's 1,700 miles away. This isn't our problem. Well, it is. These days we operate as if Chicago is on the border. And border states from Texas to California have long grappled with a cartel presence, but cases involving cartel members have now emerged in the suburbs of Chicago and Atlanta, as well as Columbus, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky, and rural North Carolina. Suspects have also surfaced in Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. Mexican drug cartels are taking over our neighborhoods, Pennsylvania Attorney General Kathleen Kane warned a legislative committee in February. The article goes on. Statistics from the DEA suggest a heightened cartel presence in more U.S. cities. In 2008, around 230 American communities reported some level of cartel presence. That number climbed to more than 1,200 in 2011, the most recent year for which information is available, though the increase is partly due to better reporting. Dozens of federal agents and local police interviewed by the AP said they have identified cartel members or operatives using wiretap conversations, informants, or confessions. Hundreds of court documents reviewed by the AP appear to support those statements. And they document in this article several cases. Now, in Mexico, the cartels are known for a staggering number of killings, more than 50,000, according to one tally, and beheadings are sometimes a signature. So far, cartels don't appear to be directly responsible for large numbers of slayings in the U.S., though the Texas Department of Public Safety reported 22 killings and 5 kidnappings in Texas at the hands of Mexican cartels from 2010 through mid-2011. Police worry that increased cartel activity could fuel heightened violence. Well, gee, I think it could. So what are we doing about this? Other than hearing these ineffective, cowardly, political hacks who we call public officials tell us that the border is more secure than ever before. The border is less secure than ever before. There's a piece at Town Hall by Katie Pavlich, who is a terrific writer and reporter, by the way. And what's going on at the border, exactly? She says, as the immigration reform gang of 8 inside the Beltway prepares to announce a deal later this week, claiming border security will come before a path to citizenship for millions of illegals, although Chuck Schumer really doesn't say that, does he? Border Patrol agents have seen illegal border crossings double, and warn the cutting of agent work hours will only result in less border security, not more. I have to be honest with you, I'm starting to get nervous about this Senator Jeff Flake from Arizona. I'm not saying I'm all over the guy. I'm just going to keep an eye on this. She reports in part data obtained by Town Hall and reported within the Customs and Border Protection CBC from January 5 through March 1, 2013. Shows 504 illegal aliens were spotted exploiting the Tucson-Nogales area. 189 were caught on CBC intelligence cameras. Of those 504, only 174 were apprehended. 32 of the 189 on camera were carrying large drug load packs for Mexican cartels. Some were armed with AK-47 style weapons. Now, the President and the Secretary of Homeland Security, they just keep telling us the border is safer than ever before. It's safer than ever before. And I'm here to tell you it is more dangerous than ever before. Do not listen to the lies of these politicians. Believe what you see with your own eyes and hear with your own ears. What you know is not true is not true. Now, one other thing. And unlike some radio hosts and guests, I'm not jumping to conclusions. But a district attorney was murdered, and his wife was murdered, and 2 months prior, an assistant district attorney in the same office in the same county was murdered. We're talking about Texas's Kaufman County. District Attorney Mike McLeland and his wife Cynthia. They were brutally murdered. She was shot in the head, and the DA was shot at least 12 times, and the reporting is running from the door. This man was a 23-year Army veteran. He was armed, and he was murdered. A district attorney, an assistant district attorney 2 months before. Now, the district attorney and his wife were murdered in their home. The assistant district attorney was killed outside the courthouse. Some news reports are suggesting white supremacist groups, but law enforcement's not suggesting that. Some reports are suggesting these drug cartels. Law enforcement's not reporting that, but people are wondering who would have the unmitigated gall, the crazy mind, to kill a district attorney. And what people are thinking is that this is exactly what they do in Mexico. They murder police chiefs. They murder prosecutors. They murder candidates who are tough on crime, tough on drugs, and so forth. I'm not going to speculate. I don't have to be the first one announcing and then saying I predicted. What I am saying, though, is not only do we need to get to the bottom of this because it is an outrageous attack on our country, on the state of Texas, on this county, it's an attempt to destroy the civil society and law and order, which must not, cannot ever be tolerated, or we will have what's going on south of the border, which is anarchy. So we need to get to the bottom of it for that reason, first and foremost. But we also need to get to the bottom of it to determine who and what is behind it. Who and what is behind it. And destroy them. And destroy them. There have been some reports on this, but not very much outrage, do you think? The only policy that I can think of that this administration has pursued when it comes to the border in any significant way is Fast and Furious, where they did the outrageous. Fast and Furious, where our Obama administration, under Eric Holder, under the Treasury Department, but this administration sold, I'll use a phrase, high-powered weapons to the drug cartels in an absolutely boneheaded move, which has resulted, reportedly, not in the death of scores of Mexicans, and, of course, a Border Patrol agent. The president has never had to answer for this, ever, just like he's never had to answer for Benghazi. He's never had to answer for any of this, and the press never presses him on it. So that is what we need to keep in mind. This president and his administration lie about what's going on the border, lie about the number of deportations, they lie about security, they lie about Fast and Furious. This is what they do. Under oath, not under oath, statements spoken, in statements released to the media. It's just one damn lie after another. Now, whatever proposal comes out of Congress, and I've already told you, if it doesn't go through the process, and we the people aren't part of that process, then we must reject it out of hand. Out of hand, period. But that said, I have no faith whatsoever that this president will enforce the law. He won't enforce the law that exists today. How do you negotiate with somebody like that? How do you reach an arrangement with somebody like that? And one of the most despised members of Congress, at least from a conservative and constitutional perspective, is Chuck Schumer. And Chuck Schumer is apparently the leading Democrat in this Gang of Eight negotiating for this. Chuck Schumer, let me be blunt and let me be clear, does not have the nation's best interests as his priority. He has politics as his number one priority, Democrat victories as his number one priority, and the destruction of our economic system as his number one priority. How do I know it? Because I've watched him over the decades. This man is the opposite of a statesman. This man's the opposite of a public official. He is a self-serving, conniving miscreant. That's right, I said it, and it's true. Chuck Schumer, he's in on it. And what about McCain and Graham? McCain and Graham almost sold us all out the other time we went through this comprehensive immigration reform process. But for you, the American people, once you were armed with the information, we would have had a disastrous law in place thanks to McCain and Graham and, yes, Bush 43. And, yes, we say let us not discuss the politics of these matters. And yet, what are politicians all about, ladies and gentlemen, if not politics? They're always looking for their next election and their next donation. Most of them are looking for higher office. And the Republican establishment has concluded that that involves pandering. The Republican establishment has concluded that that involves, truthfully, not securing a pathway to citizenship, but citizenship for people who are here illegally, the vast number of whom are Democrats in waiting. These Republicans have no allegiance to principle. Now, whose country is this? Whose country is this? Is this country owned by foreigners who come here illegally, and the governments that encourage them to come here illegally, and the governments who come into our courts and file lawsuits to demand that we recognize them and to demand that they receive benefits? Whose country is this, ladies and gentlemen? It's our country. Now, what do I mean by our country? I mean the citizens of the United States. This entire government was established through our Constitution for we the people, by we the people, through our representatives. This country doesn't belong to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce or the AFL-CIO. It doesn't belong to some ethnic front group like La Raza or LULAC or whomever. This country doesn't belong to Barack Obama and Lindsey Graham and John McCain and Chuck Schumer. This country belongs to you. Since when is it compassionate to open our doors to all kinds of people, including people we don't know who may do our own families and neighbors and coworkers harm? Since when is that compassionate? That's crazy.